Final piece tonight. A young teacher was murdered in Ireland, aged just 23. And another statistic of violence that is perpetuated in society over our lifetime. Sex or violence, crimes against females, is a sign of a very weak male. And it's something that needs to be addressed. And we can cite several programs that ran against males like feminism, the Protocols of Zion and others. But it should not negate our own personal responsibility. We the people allowed those programs to work due to our own lack of inner strength and no personal or collective accountability. And the male aspect has been reduced to just 2 columns. The weak and easily controlled aspect and the aggressive, violent and disruptive family person. And whilst there is the third aspect, the more balanced male, the other 2 categories dominate the male scene. And then we have the youth male. Far too many in my hometown and in the UK and Ireland have an ugly, feral type nature to them. Self-serving, no responsibility or accountability for their own actions, charity, compassion and common decency fails to exist in their world. And the tradition is to blame the parents. And yes, they have to take some responsibility. But it's the program that creates it all that continues to fail to be addressed. The think tanks of a Jewish flavour, whether Jewish or not, continues to create divisive programs aided and abetted by news channels and related avenues. And what is left is a divided and broken culture with a long road back to anything resembling a decent civilization. And we can individually blame the males and or the females, but finger pointing in either direction has never solved the problem. The problem is deep-seated, a distinct lack of morals, manners and basic behavioural traits that has been lost, particularly over the last 2 generations. Obsessed by their own narcissistic traits, obsessed by fake image, obsessed by money and devoid of basic decency standards. And we can blame the youth. But we older generations were no better. And at the end of the day, it was our generation that produced these children out of largely low vibrational marriages and unions. And this brings in the aspect of love. And the majority on this world thinks they know love. But the majority reside in a low vibrational vacuum. That the love frequency cannot and does not reside. And think tank programs have blurred what is love. What does having sex mean? Can the 2 merge into one? Or are they both separate identity categories that can merge into one? Have we really defined it? If a man wants to have sex with several females, does that man mean he loves all of them in a romantic way? The answer is no. But some females are conditioned into thinking that the 2 go together, like some seedy New Age romance model. But look around you. Has that worked? The answer is a definitive no. Look around your own circles. How many couples have you met that fit the average romance novel? It is romantic, idealised rubbish that does not fit into real life situations. But sex also plays into the power game between males and females, and it ultimately leads to frustrated people, some of which then go to the very base level of human depravity and decide to have sex with unwilling people. And we can blame pornography on that demise. But let's forget the porn for a second and think, what is the overwhelming aspect about porn that people miss? Voyeurism. People viewing what other people are doing, and it mirrors life, does it not? People gossiping and interfering in other people's lives with some fake higher moral stance that because other people's lives are a car crash, that in some ways their life isn't. What a voyeuristic delusion that is. And it's a vicious hamster wheel cycle. And there are many other hamster wheels in society in general that we have jumped upon. The key is, how do we get people to jump off their own personal wheels? And it all starts with a charter school with a curriculum based on all children learning and progressing. All children supporting each other, not tearing each other apart. That leaves many with inner traumas that affects their adult life. You teach children morals, manners, anger management through meditation practices, table manners, and values, all in a non-competitive environment. It's not rocket science. And then get children ready before developing or delving into the supposed adult world. Because the current adult world looks like a poorly run kindergarten with no teachers or guides, filled with adults told to do as they please with no consideration for anyone else. Which then leads us into this piece. Thinking about the concept of power and force within the context of the current global crisis leads us towards some profound conclusions. For one, agendas that centre around inequality, control, profit and material gain are always driven by force. And force is a tool used by those who are weak and lack power. And when your motives go against the good of humanity, when your intentions fail to support life itself, your only option is to use force. And force includes all manner of fear-mongering, manipulation, coercion, and violence. And force may work up to a point, but as we discovered, it requires a constant input of energy. And therefore, results are obtained at a cost. Pro-pagan dark campaigns requires vast amounts of money, coordination, and tireless censorship. Vaccine mandates requires bribes, threats, and the covering up of adverse events. And this energy input is immense, and most importantly, it's unsustainable. As force creates friction, it must constantly be fed with more and more energy. But as the force becomes stronger, so does the friction. And force, due to its polarizing nature, increases entropy. As entropy rises, the available energy decreases, until eventually momentum ceases and the entire thing grinds to a halt. And while the source of power is self-evident, indestructible and inarguable, force is subject to proof and requires constant justification. while true power emanates from consciousness itself. Force is driven by the ego. And those who use force to impose their will on humanity always succumb to power. And as history has shown, all totalitarian regimes eventually come crashing down, not on account of some divine intervention, but because each of us is born with inalienable rights that are intrinsic to human creation. Therefore, it is only a matter of time before the transhumanist force implodes. However, the time it takes for that to happen is dependent on our ability to reduce disorder and increase inner power. A lower entropy consciousness means more energy available to do work which results in more inner power, freedom, happiness and love. And as our power collectively grows, we create an immovable wall able to repel any and all negative influences and nefarious threats. But on the other hand, the ego mind is constantly asking unanswerable questions and worrying about unlikely futures. And as our minds become cluttered with fear-laden media, our power decreases and we find ourselves at the mercy of authorities. That's how it works. But Bohm's holographic universe hinted at the true nature of our reality, and Krishnamurti showed us how to realize it. And by turning our attention away from the content of thought and focusing on the process of thinking itself, we can bring order to the mind and begin to discover something completely new, operating from the heart. And in this way, we extricate ourselves from a state of fear and confusion and move towards freedom and certitude. And the result of this is an increase in inner power. If you have more inner power, they have less external. Which is what I was talking about maybe an hour or so ago about the energy. Take away their energy and they die. And force is by definition limited in what it can accomplish, and therefore it's not a matter of if the transhumanists will fail, but when. And all people alive on this planet have failed on some level or other. And the key is recognizing your own role in it, not others' roles, and then working to correct it. If every person on this planet does that, the world changes due to the power and force of just one person. You. To the sleepers, you won't see life for what it is through a rose-tinted lens. For the newly awakened, you won't see life for what it is through a political lens, or you won't see it for what it is until you stop looking through the lens of what you expect it to be. To the advanced people, you will see it for what it is. As you have unlearned the lies, stepped away from their world, and began to manifest what we all wish to see in our world. Things are developing behind the scenes, as many minor and major projects are ongoing and being formulated. Most of them are not written down yet, but are in my head, and all will be revealed when safe to do so. We must put aside our egos, self-importance, and forge alliances wherever possible, and the major projects will stimulate that, and be prepared in each gathering for an expansion of people, ideas, and plans. As the COVID collapses in on itself, we will replace their PCR, which means pathetic clowns ruling, with our PCR, prosperity, courage and resistance. We will replace their RNA, ridiculous, nonsensical actions, with Renaissance, new actions. We will replace their order from chaos and PPEs with our own PPE, peace, progression and empathy. This has been the Truth, Honour and Integrity Show. My name's Thomas Williams. Bye for now.